So emptiness sounds like everything's dead, but empty doesn't mean that. It means empty of separate existence, you could say. So you would not be here without your parents, their parents, their parents. Somebody ate a different sandwich, like 250 years ago. You wouldn't be here. That sandwich is in here somewhere. So you are here due to causes and conditions. You did not get here in a space capsule. So emptiness could be expressed as accurately or more accurately as the great expanse, fullness, complete fullness.
Hello and welcome to the Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck podcast with David Nichtern on the Be Here Now network. My name is Brett Kane, and I'll be the host and MC of this lively gathering. If you're a returning listener, you may notice that I am, in fact, not Michael Kamers. He has made the decision to step away from this project and is now focusing on his career as a music therapist. We're all wishing him well on his future endeavors and are excited to see where they take him. With that, I'll be taking the reins on assisting David and helping produce this show. So on behalf of all of us at Be Here Now and Dharma Moon, we sincerely hope that this podcast finds you well and in good spirits. For those of you who are new to the program, this is an exploration of how to lead an integrated life involving spiritual practice, creative expression, and right livelihood. In it, our fearless leader, David Nichtern, interviews guests who embody and manifest these principles in their own lives. For this episode, David is joined by longtime friend, author, meditation teacher, and founder of the Open Heart Project, Susan Piver. If you're unfamiliar with Susan, she's the New York Times best-selling author of many books, including The Hard Questions and The Wisdom of a Broken Heart. She began her meditation practice in 1993 and has gone on to create one of the first online Dharma communities, the Open Heart Project, in 2014. She's on the tail end of releasing her newest book, Inexplicable Joy, on the Heart Sutra. It is the first in a new series called Buddhism Beyond Belief, which is published by the Open Heart Project and Lionheart Press. It's now available wherever you purchase your books and also just happens to be what she and David are discussing today. So if you happen to resonate with Susan's presentation of the Dharma in this episode, I strongly recommend picking up one of her books, or if you're so bold, you can join her in retreat at the Drala Mountain Center on August 25th through September 1st. The link to that will be provided in the bio of this episode. So this is the flavor of what we're going to be getting into today. Before that though, we'd like to encourage everyone to head over to dharmamoon.com, where we have an extensive schedule of programming available for you. We run several mindfulness meditation teacher trainings a year, with David as the senior teacher, supported by a wonderful staff of assistant teachers and mentors. Our next cohort for that begins on June 13th and will run through September 7th. If that's something that interests you, you're welcome to check out the free info session that takes place on Tuesday, May 27th, where David will be chatting with Krishna Das on the relationship between Buddhism and Bhakti. Last but not least, we want to offer a huge thanks to the Be Here Now network and everyone involved with the post-production and distribution of this podcast. So very grateful to be a part of their wonderful podcast family. So if you like stuff like this, we encourage you to head on over to BeHereNowNetwork.com, where you can hear other podcasts from folks such as Sharon Salzberg, Joseph Goldstein, and many others. So that is it for the introduction of this show. We are on to episode 55 of the Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck podcast with David Nichtern and special guest Susan Piver.
I have one thing to say right off the bat here, which is yay! I get to spend an hour with Susan Piver, one of my oldest friends, one of my dearest friends, one of the most thoughtful but yet irreverent and yet playful and yet serious people on the planet. She and I were just chatting for a minute, and I realized that her latest book, she's had quite a few books come out, Inconceivable Joy.
Inexplicable.
Whoa, that's deep. Inexplicable Joy. Okay, so I thought we could launch from there. And first of all, could you tell folks about the book? But second of all, let's talk about joy. That would be refreshing for today.
I would love to, and I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah.
And spoiler, it's called Inexplicable Joy because I can't explain it. So I'm off the
hook. And the book's just empty, right?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's about the Heart Sutra, the Prajnaparamita Sutra, which is something I have been chanting almost every day for over 30 years. And you, I'm sure, have vast experience also with the Prajnaparamita Sutra, not the whole thing, which is about 100,000 lines long.
Yeah.
And then
that's
there's another.
That's the one I work with, by the way.
Yeah, every day, I'm sure. Then there's the 8,000 line one.
Shoosh.
Then there's the 43 line one. That's the one that I assume, have been practicing from Nalanda translation. And then, as I was taught, there's the 0 lines long version, 1 syllable. You studied that one, I know.
Well, what is there to study about it?
Exactly.
Or are there commentaries on that very short expression of it?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
So nobody tried to explicate that one either.
Which is a good sign, I think.
Right. Okay. So you have a love affair with the Heart Sutra, which, for those who don't know, it's the famous Buddhist sutra that's chanted all over the world, and every Buddhist culture has a version of it, pretty much. Form is emptiness. Emptiness itself is form. It is also sometimes called the Heart Attack Sutra, right? Because it was so stunning at the time to have so penetrating a view into how you could frame your Dharma study and practice. And what about it is it that what about the Heart Sutra magnetized you to this extent?
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about the way you and I sort of move through the world as kind of noticing what you're doing rather than deciding to do something. And my relationship with the Heart Sutra started that way. I asked someone, and will not make this a long story, to teach me how to meditate. And he said no. Then I saw him again. He said, well, okay. And I went to his house and we talked a little bit. This is 35 years ago. We talked a little bit about my interest in meditation. And he said, okay, well, I'll teach you how to sit. And before we sit, we'll say this. And he handed me a piece of paper. And it was the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. It was this 43-line version of the Heart Sutra. He said, just skip over the words you can't pronounce. I said, okay, I like your face right now. So I'm like, thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling. Who's the Blessed One? I don't know, but okay. So then he taught me how to meditate.
Wow.
So that was the seed syllable for my whole practice life. Only it didn't even occur to me till like maybe 5 or 7 years ago. And I've been chanting it ever since.
Wow. I'm just taking that in for a minute. He said no, then he said maybe, and then he gave you the Heart Sutra?
Uh-huh.
This is somebody who doesn't fool around.
He's still my meditation teacher.
Wow.
And his name is Sam.
Can we say his whole name for people? Or?
Yeah, sure. Sam Burkholz.
Okay.
He's still
a little bit about Sam that's interesting is, can you share a little bit about?
Absolutely, with pleasure. Sam Burkholz, founder and publisher of Shambhala Publications.
Wow.
Probably the preeminent Buddhist publisher in the world. I knew none of this when I met him. I mean, I knew he was the publisher of Shambhala, but I just met him once at a party. So I didn't really know. I was not a Buddhist, obviously, at that point. So I'm like, okay, I just went with it.
Wow.
I was lucky. Could have been weird, but it wasn't.
We'll leave that one to the side. So, the Heart Sutra came at you full speed out of like kind of a completely empty space. Nothing prepared you for it. None of the things mentioned it. You hadn't studied any of those things already, right?
I had not studied anything.
Wow.
Besides, who played guitar on Muddy Waters Folk Singer.
Who was that?
Muddy Water, a Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy, right? Cool.
Because I was in the music business. I didn't know there was a difference between Buddhism and Hinduism at that time. I was fresh off the boat.
Oh, wow.
And through the years, and maybe this has happened to you, I would be interested and curious. I did not understand the Heart Sutra the first time I chanted it, and I do not understand it now. However, my relationship with it continues to deepen. It arises through relationship rather than intellectual perception, I would say, at least for me. So I value that tremendously. Something continues to deepen in interesting ways, starting with that very first moment.
So do you chant it every day?
I do.
I wonder if we should include that as part of this podcast. Maybe towards the end, you could just chant it.
I
So
would
people would have a
love
chance
that.
to hear it. Let's talk about it a little more, and then let's try to include that.
That sounds great.
Because it is a sutra, as you mentioned, which is a discourse, an original discourse involving Shakyamuni Buddha. And so it is a central part of it. And it is chanted in public. It's not esoteric in that point of view. It does have an enormous historical footprint in terms of how different cultures have related to it. I remember when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was in New York teaching at the Beacon Theater, and he would have all the monks on the stage with him and nuns, and then he would invite each day a different group to chant the Heart Sutra.
Oh.
The Koreans, the Japanese, the Indian, whatever, whoever was there, and the Americans. So each day was a different iteration of it. I call it like the amazing grace of the Buddhist world because everybody knows a version of it. So now I'll take you at your word, my dear, wonderful friend Susan Piver, as I would like to, that you don't understand it. Is that what you said?
It is what I said. Uh-huh.
But it's okay if I enter that exploration with you?
I would love that.
Yeah. So what kind of a process would you go through to understand it? Let's say you wanted to try to understand it more. What would you do?
I would say, as I have said to myself, and as I was taught, there are 3 ways to understand the Heart Sutra.
Okay.
The first is the meaning of the words.
Okay.
What is a skanda? Who is Avalokiteshvara? What does Om Gate Gate mean? Very important.
Okay.
But that's usually where we, I would say, at least as Westerners, stop. If I can understand what the words mean, then I can understand the whole thing. But this doesn't work that way. The second way to understand it is by hearing the sound of the words. So it's often chanted in a monotone, and perhaps that's why. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but the words themselves have a sound like it is a giant seed syllable, like om or hum or hri. I'm making that part up. But that's the second way, the sound of the words, not just this meaning, the sound. And the third is the environment into which it is spoken seems to alter in some way.
It morphs?
It feels different to be in a room where you're chanting the Heart Sutra than it does to be in that same room without chanting the Heart Sutra.
Right.
That's my explanation. So that's what I would say, those 3 ways.
Okay. So there is the meaning of the words.
Mm-hmm.
There is the sound of it.
Yep.
Okay. And there's the atmosphere.
I will give you an example. You are a musician. That's not the example, but you are a musician. So you will have your own similar examples, I'm sure. Right. So I was taking a walk, as one does, with my AirPods in, listening to music. And I have a playlist that was just shuffling. And the first thing that came on as I'm walking on this path, and it's pretty, was Chet Baker singing My Funny Valentine. It's so spacious, so beautiful. His voice is so reedy. He plays a reed instrument. It was just, and I'm looking around at the world like, wow, I love the world. It's very beautiful. And then next in the shuffle came Jump Around from House of Pain, which is like a mid-90s hip-hop song where it's just jump around. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa, it's a different world now. It's a different world. The world looks spikier and not bad or good, but different. So that's an example of the meaning, the sound, and the environment, I would say.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm big on the inseparability of whatever iterations, whatever delineations happen. There's always, like, take for example the three kayas that we talk about in Buddhism, right? The body, or nirmanakaya, the speech, or sambhogakaya, and the mind, the dharmakaya. There's always a fourth one. And I always like to know the name of the fourth one. In this case, it's pretty esoteric. Svabhavakakaya.
I'm very impressed that you can pronounce it.
Well, barely, but and so therefore, like, let's say you take the delineation of a man and a woman, for example, and then you have the inseparability of them, and maybe a couple kind of situation, and what's the totality of the situation? So when you emphasize meaning of the words, sound, and atmosphere, maybe those are inseparable.
I totally believe they are.
So therefore, what is that totality? Is there a way to access the totality of the experience without, mucking up any of the individual partners into the totality?
Could you svabhavakakaya it?
Yes.
Kaya it. Yeah.
Yeah. So speech, sound, and atmosphere.
Words, sound, and atmosphere.
Yeah. So let's go into each one separately.
Okay.
And what about the words? Like, you've studied the words and the meaning of the words?
Yeah. Definitely I have.
Because there's a lot of detail in there.
A lot of detail. And I often forget what, I'm like, wait, which one is the skanda and which one is which one comes with the skanda and so on. But when I'm in Austin right now, as I mentioned to you, and I swim here every morning in a beautiful 3-acre spring-fed pool that is the greatest source of joy. It's called Barton Springs. Anyone's been here, they know about it.
That's sort of explicable joy, though, right?
Quite explicable.
Okay.
I chant the Heart Sutra while I'm swimming.
You do?
Well, in my head, yeah.
Okay, I see.
And I try to imprint it. Anyway, I know that's not your question.
So you have it memorized, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The words are complicated. What, as mentioned earlier, what is a skanda? And then, no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness. Okay, that's one set of things.
Right.
No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Another set of things. No appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. It's another set of things. They're all connected. And then you mentioned the Heart Attack Sutra. This is where I think monks had heart attacks, as the story goes, when this was being taught, not by the Buddha,
right,
by Avalokiteshvara.
Right.
No dharmas. No path.
Oh.
No suffering.
Yes.
No cause of suffering. No cessation of suffering.
Yeah.
No path. That's the Four Noble Truths. So in this teaching was, forget about those. I think that's where people had heart attacks. So that's where my understanding ends. I understand what the intention was, I believe, in saying those things.
Right.
But, excuse me, the inexplicable part is what's left.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. What's left? So how would you feel now about, we're just improvising, obviously, clearly, to anybody who's watching, you must be able to detect that. But how would you feel about reciting it so everybody who's not familiar with it gets some flavor of it? And would you use the bell or just chant?
I think I just chant it.
Okay.
But I have it memorized, but it's on spot. I do want to look at it because I don't want to mess it up. And I know where it is. So I've got my little iPad right here. Okay. But I can get started anyway. And I'm going to say it.
Yeah. Okay.
If that's okay.
All right, everybody. So just to frame this out, you're hearing Susan Piver reading the Heart Sutra, which is a very famous Buddhist teaching and kind of enigmatic, as she's been indicating. And it's meant to be read, and if you can, memorize it and then contemplate the different elements of it in the way she's talking about it. So we'd like to share this with those of you who are familiar with it, but also with those of you who are not. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. It's quite a complex compendium of Buddhist teachings, but it has its own resonance. And as Susan said, just the sound of it has a certain potency as well.
Agreed.
So let's please, if you will.
I will. I just want to make one comment on the very opening phrase, which is, "Thus have I heard."
Right.
So who is this I? It's thought to be Ananda, who was the Buddhist secretary and also his cousin, renowned for his spectacular memory.
Right.
But maybe he had a bad stomach that day. Maybe someone got in a fight with him. We don't know what he remembered. It wasn't. So you have to be the I every time.
Okay.
Thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Raja Griha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma, called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita?" Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, "Oh, Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Om Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Svaha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then, the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, "Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is." One should practice the profound prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly and the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Was that you dropping the mic at the end?
It's also my translation of Svaha.
Friends, Susan and I are from the music business. We share that too. We share the Dharma. You were what was your exact job title?
I worked at various record labels in the independent side of the music business.
Right. So now coming back to the words, which we just experienced, the sound, which is lovely to hear you reading it because the sound is quite pleasing. So it's magnetizing. I put you into the Padma family, the magnetizing family. It invites one in. One wants to just, resonate in there with it. And then the atmosphere, which it definitely took me to another place in time.
How would you describe it if you can?
Like being there.
Yeah.
And this is a funny conversation I had once with one of my teachers. I said, my Chinese friend Sat Han, I said, Sifu, do you think didn't we hear all these things before in previous incarnations? And weren't we the ones, weren't some of us at these original sutras and these things? And I also wondered how they heard each other because they didn't have mics and amplifiers and all that kind of stuff. And he was explaining how he thought that would go on. That there were relay people relaying the speech out into the recesses of the audience.
Wow.
And I said, weren't we there? He says, oh, we were definitely there. We were the ones who didn't get it.
That sounds right.
So I did have a feeling, and it's kind of like Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine. Remember that?
I do.
Like that we traveled through time and space for a minute there just to like feel that space. And, I think we should take our current Dharma gatherings with that much preciousness, in a sense of like, hey, maybe 2,500 years from now, somebody will be talking about this, and or watching this podcast for that matter. It'll probably be implanted in their brain already, and they will have just to blink three times to see it.
Well, as they say, the cause and result of virtuous and non-virtuous actions cannot be denied. I mean, there's karma. What we do, what we're doing right now, it's inexplicable, but it creates a wave of some kind.
So now you're taking that forward into your platform, which you are one of the first people I know to get your butt online and start preaching the Dharma online and gathering a community online before you had to do it when the pandemic started, which is when I did it. Oh, I guess we're going to have to do what Susan did already. And you have your community. How's that going?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's good. It's weird, but in a good way. Not weird I think it's weird for me because it has been going on for a while. The Open Heart Project, I started when I first started teaching retreats. So it's like 10 or 11 years ago, maybe 12. And I would say to people, well, if you want to keep meditating, you should find a meditation instructor. And back then, that was not easy. Now it's almost like, how are you going to do that? It's very hard to do. So I'm like, okay, well, give me your email address and I'll send you meditation videos, instruction, stopgap kind of thing. And every day, because I was insane. And very quickly, there was 1,000 people. Then there was 8,000 people. now there's 20,000 people that get these meditation videos.
Yeah.
And at some point, I'm like, this is my full-time job. I got to figure out a way to make a living. So I started an Open Heart Project Sangha.
And then you read my book, Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck.
It emanated from my head into your
I wrote the book after you did it. Yeah.
No, so it's, but the point, I think the salient point here is after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, there have been people who have been meditating now for years. And they're like, what else do you got?
With you and the Open Heart Project.
Yeah.
That's their Sangha.
Yes, exactly. I used to try to send them someplace, but now there's no place to go, or very few places. So they're like, well, what else? What else you got? I want to take the refuge vow, for example.
Yeah.
How do I deepen my practice? So that's the part that that's the part that is interesting and important and whatever. And I don't know what the word is, but those are the breadcrumbs I'm trying to follow. So I was authorized, as they say, to give the refuge vow about 4 years ago, because I'm old school. And I'm sure you are too in certain ways. There's certain things I don't think you should just do without someone opening the door.
Sure.
This was one of them.
Yeah.
So I worked. It took me a long time to get not because to find the right person to open the door. And then at some point, a couple of years later, so a few years ago, I'm like, well, why don't we do the Heart Sutra? You people who want to deepen your practice, because as you were saying earlier, it's in the public.
Right.
Anyone can do it.
Right.
It is the whole
and
deal.
It's loaded for bear.
It's perfectly said.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all right there. So if you're like, well, how do I do Dzogchen or, crazy things that people wonder about? Well, it's all right here. Just start saying this and see what happens.
This is like, there are probably energy forces that we sometimes call deities and so forth, and some are holders of particular texts and protectors of those. That's part of the Indo-Tibetan tradition. And it's like, you might swoon on a hot day while you're practicing, and then you awaken to a visualization of some kind of lovely being that is transmitting the Heart Sutra to you. That's how I feel today.
That is the nicest thing any human has ever said to another human. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. I mean, and it now, so let's go further. If somebody wants to go further, they can read your book, which is about this, right?
Yes, and it's very short.
Oh,
it's very short.
Is it one syllable? Did you get it down to one syllable? No, that would be funny.
That would be funny.
Like it reminds me of Abby Hoffman somehow or something like that. Steal this book. Here's a book. No, steal this book. When you say it's very short, is it available on Amazon or whatever?
Yeah, so anywhere you want. Yeah.
We can, and do you have a version of it? You reading it? Is there an audible version of it?
Yes and no. Yes, I did. I did record it, but I haven't published it yet. The audio, because these are self-published books. My last several books have been self-published.
Wow, look at you!
Which I really like. We started a little press called Lionheart, and we're starting a series called Buddhism Beyond Belief. And this is the first book in that series. Inexplicable
Is
Joy.
this the imprint that says you're not going to believe this, and you start that way, like two characters on Saturday Night Live or something like that? You're not going to believe this, but thus have I heard.
Exactly. Well, actually, the opening line of I think of the Inexplicable Joy, the Heart Sutra book, is many profound and insightful books have been written about the Heart Sutra. This is not one of them.
Oh, that's funny.
So be warned.
That is really funny. And so they can read that book, which does it give any historical context to?
Yes.
Does it give a little wraparound if somebody wanted to learn about it?
Line by line. It's a line by line
breakdown of it
type of situation.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on decreasing the potential impact and benefit for somebody, because I don't know, there are other books, right? Thich Nhat Hanh has a book about it, does he not?
Yeah, and the Heart Attack Sutra by Karl Brunholzl, whose name I always butcher, but that's a great book too. Brunholzl, something like that. Carl B, we call him.
We'll get that right.
Okay.
And so the thing is that this could be perceived as only at the end of a long course of studying all these categories and things in Buddhism, and then you would have more context for what's being said. But I think you're saying that it could be just as it was for you, like the first thing that you ever heard, which is kind of funny to me.
I know. Why is it funny to you? I mean, I feel that way too.
It's like there was no build up to it, and like there was no cliff to jump off of. They just push you off. It's like you want to learn how to dive, and then just somebody pushes you into the pool.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. And the Inexplicable Joy, the book is not, let me tell you about the Heart Sutra.
Right.
It's like, this is what I think, and this is what confused me, and this is how I learned that. And then I ran into someone, in this case, I butcher this name too, Kazuaki Tanahashi Sensei.
Okay.
Who is a great calligrapher. He's 94 years old. And
I know who he is, yeah.
He wrote an incredible book with Joan Halifax, I believe, on the Heart Sutra. And I ran into him right before I was going to teach a retreat on the Heart Sutra.
Right.
And which made me very embarrassed because I'm like, well, there's an actual master here, and sort of slunk around. But anyway, I had a conversation with him. I learned a lot from that. So the book is sort of conversational. It's hopefully not like, oh, I don't know anything. Good luck. But it's more personal. This is how I walk through it. Now you're invited.
Yeah, very good. And then you occasionally do retreats centered around this. Is there one coming up anytime soon?
There is a retreat coming up at Drala Mountain Center, ex-Shambhala Mountain Center, at the end of August. I'm very excited about it. It's a 1-week meditation retreat where we're going to do a lot with the Heart Sutra.
And the we in this case is?
The people who are there and me.
Okay. The usual we. The other people and me, right?
The royal we.
So we can definitely put a link to that in the show notes.
That would be great.
And that would be about timed out right for people to start thinking about their summer and Dharma in the summer. Or, will I see you in September or lose you to a Dharma retreat that turns into a monastic lifestyle for the rest of time? Have you had any thought ever of like, I've had enough with this worldly life. I want to just go deep into practice and study. Has that thought ever crossed your mind?
Yes and no. I mean, it crosses my mind probably every day when I get grumpy about whatever. I'm like, F all y'all, I'm out.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But other than that, I feel, and this is the next book I'm pretending to write, I hope I will actually do it, is on the householder path.
Oh, good.
How do you make all of this not monastic, but how do you make all of this your practice?
Wow.
And but sometimes I do think about, the older I get, I don't know what will happen, obviously, but how about you?
Well, when you said, when I get grumpy, I can dig that perspective. And then I had the thought of like, what happens if you do become a monastic and then you get grumpy? You've got no further rope. You've just like tied the rope that you were bailing yourself out and around your neck. And so I could see there's a certain power to that. If somebody really understood that they're not running away from something, they're just stealing their exit routes for not having to work with their own state of mind. So that's why that tradition has and probably will survive. And I do think retreat practice, having just come back from the Dharma Moon retreat at Menla, gives an extraordinary opportunity to process things in a way that you can't in the householder setting alone. So I think the householder thing, going back and forth between that and study and practice. But if you just are saying, "Oh, I can do it in the field," and you don't have a tie line to the to some kind of study and practice, that can get very shoddy very quick. In my life, it has. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and I can totally see why you say that, and I agree. Yeah. And we need some deepening.
Yeah, deep and then wide. Right?
Deep and then wide, exactly. Yeah. One without the other, not so good, at least for me.
Yeah. So we had one talk this weekend. Had my friend Duncan Trussell, who was one of the participants in the retreat. He wanted to talk about enlightenment. So, do you think the
Curious.
Heart Sutra has anything to do with enlightenment?
I'm thinking. Yes.
Yeah. The answer is yes.
Well, I don't know what enlightenment is, so it's hard for me to say.
Okay.
But the mantra, Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Svaha,
Right.
is like gone beyond, really gone beyond. Holy bleep, we really went beyond. We got there.
Right.
Awake, mic drop, Bodhi Svaha. So it's sort of saying, if you're going to go beyond, where are you going? It's saying, awake.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sure you know, there's sort of 3 ways for bodhisattvas to help people become enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
The king, follow me, I'll tell you what to do. The boat person, let's get in my boat, I'll row us there, we'll go together. And the shepherd, everybody go and I'll go last.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is like a boat.
Yeah.
It's the boat person's song. Sure. And preceding the mantra is my favorite line, the mantra that calms all suffering. So if you ever wondered, is there a mantra that calms all suffering? Well, this one says, yeah, this is it. So suffering, as we have been trained, I believe, is confused by dualistic appearances. And so non-suffering or enlightenment is entering the field of emptiness, which cannot be entered or exited, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this is how. This is how.
Well, emptiness, of course, is another topic that comes up quite a lot for people who approach the Buddhist arena and either befuddled by it or think they can talk their way in or out of understanding of it. What could I ask you to say to somebody who heard about this? Oh, Buddhism, they're into emptiness. That's just nihilism. That's just, those people are so negative. That's all they talk about is everything's nothing. The big nothing. Okay, yawn, onward and upward. I want something.
It's so sad if the whole Buddhist path was like, hey, there's nothing there. Yeah. Null and void. Tohu vavohu. That's the opening line of the Old Testament. Null and void. It's understandable that the word emptiness, I wish I knew what the original word was, would sound bad.
You don't want to know the Chinese translation of shunyata?
Who said I don't want to know? I do.
The great expanse.
See, that's perfect.
Isn't that good?
Yes. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. So emptiness sounds like everything's dead. But empty doesn't mean that. It means empty of separate existence.
Okay.
You could say, so you would not be here. Allergies. Without your parents, their parents, somebody ate a different sandwich, like 250 years ago. You wouldn't be here. That sandwich is in here somewhere. So you are here due to causes and conditions. You did not get here in a space capsule. So emptiness could be expressed as accurately or more accurately as the great expanse, fullness, complete fullness.
And you know how Ethan Nichtern, my son and Dharma friend, expresses it as interdependence.
Of course.
That was a choice that he made about whether to talk about it that way. It's exactly the flip side of saying everything is interdependent, which is what you just said, essentially, right?
I think, we're all saying the same thing, but the great expanse is the most beautiful. Yeah, I would say.
So I guess when you said it, Susan, I had a moment of like a pang. of like missing myself, of just like, there's something to let go of to really experience that fully and properly. And it's sort of a crude sense of being somebody with something to be pissed about, something to want, something with longevity. Like a lot of my friends are doing way longevity kind of things like stem cells and, just wanting whatever one thinks this is to keep going on, and a grasping kind of energy, a kind of pissed off, grumpy kind of energy, and a kind of stupidity, which, and I just felt lonely when you said that.
When I said which part? Emptiness?
Well, just that there is no separate existence.
Yeah.
And I went like, no, it's my separate existence. Nobody understands me. Nobody listens to me anymore. It's like, all the successes are fleeting. Everything's evaporating, slip sliding away. It had all those kind of feelings to it. What would you say about that? Like, how do you process all that?
Well, I don't know how to process it, but I share those feelings. And there's a couple things that came to mind as you were saying it. And one was an anecdote from one of my favorite books that I believe I turned you on to many years ago, called On Becoming an Alchemist. This is such a good book.
I've turned on a lot of people to that book.
Thank you. Great. It's we got to pay it forward, because that is a very spectacular book, On Becoming an Alchemist, written by an alchemist, a hermeticist named Catherine McCune, who was a student of the Dharma. And there's an anecdote in that book that she was at a dinner party long ago with the greatest alchemist she ever met. And it turned out she didn't name him, but she's talking about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And she said people were passing food and telling jokes, and it was a party. And in the middle of it all, he burst into tears. Yeah, stories in the book. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And all the noise stopped, and everybody looked at him. And he said, "I'm so lonely."
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Such an incredible story. And of course, I don't know what he was feeling. Yeah. But it must be some sense of, I am alone in the great expanse, and not even that.
Yeah.
Because when you
not even that it sounds like a good Zen saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Not even that.
Not even that. Really, so when you say, I should try to let go.
Yeah.
The instruction, as I have heard it, is, okay, but then you have to let go of trying to let go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard though, right?
Oh, I don't know how to do it.
And people don't take that answer very easily or gracefully, because that's like, that could easily be misunderstood as nihilism, right?
Absolutely.
Let go of letting go. Stop practicing, like when you have people who are on spiritual trips and they say, oh, practice is stupid, it's just effortful, and you can't get there that way.
Well, good luck to them. That's what I say.
Let go of letting go. Yeah, so, just somehow that has to be understood, right?
Yes, and it cannot be understood. So we come back to the inexplicable. So another Trungpa Rinpoche anecdote, and the Dharma, as I do not have to tell you, always ends up in the inexplicable. Like, I should be more attached. Well, now you're attached to non-attachment. So I should be less attached. Yeah. So it's always going to bonk you back in the face when you think you understand it. So, however, I once heard, someone told me this, I didn't read it, so I'm going to have to assume it's true. Someone was talking to Trungpa Rinpoche in a public talk and raised their hand and said, is the point of meditation to cultivate the inner observer? Seems like a reasonable question. Mm-hmm. And Trungpa Rinpoche, according to this anecdote, said, yes. And then you let go of the inner observer.
Sure, which is Mahamudra instructions, essentially.
I believe you.
You do gather, a perspective that is more, let's say, less attached to the content, and you get clarity of mind. And then you look at who is having that experience and let go of that sense of an experiencer. First, you look at the experience, then you look at the experiencer. And then when you can't find that either, then you rest in not finding it.
I think that's, I don't know how to do it, obviously, but I think that's the key, is the rest.
Yeah, resting. Well, which means the compulsion to gather an identity has somewhat worn out.
And even being upset about it wearing out has worn out. The wearing out, it just all keeps disappearing.
Well, and that's why these enlightened people that we were so lucky to get in touch with, as far as I'm concerned, I call it dumb luck when I'm talking about it. I don't think, you could argue whatever you want, but like when Trungpa Rinpoche came to the West, and then he introduced us to Karmapa 16 and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Kala Rinpoche, like a festival of kind of bluesmen from the last iteration of that going to be the case. I just thought, like, I'll take it, but I don't get why I'm. I feel like still to this day completely appreciative of the accident that I take that to be.
I could not relate to that more.
Yeah,
I fell backwards. I don't know why.
And we're here, holding some kind of fort, zong in Tibetan, lonely outpost, abandoned by friends and teachers, as like it says in the poem. And then we have our colleagues, and we have students at this point, and it's disingenuous to say that we don't, because people want to learn this, and they're younger people coming along who want to learn about this. So how do you hold your seat as a teacher at this point? Do you feel, do you have to do any mental gymnastics, self-confidence, any way of saying, I'm doing this, which you have been very strongly doing of all of us? You've been holding that seat.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I'll tell you how it works for me, and I would love to hear how it works for you. If I'm going to give a talk and I look at the people who are there and I'm like, well, how can I help? Then I start to get freaked out, and I feel scared. But when I think about who's standing behind me, when I think about my teachers, I feel very confident and strong. So thy choice, because I think it is the right choice, and beyond right, it honors the sense of transmission. I mean, if I think about the people in the Open Heart Project, of course, I hope that what's going on there will help them. Yeah. But mostly what I help is to honor what I've been given.
It's so interesting because, we were not raised in a tradition in which people were empowered in this way. And so, and I would say that I think the contemporary generations are not as magnetized to this level of, finding authenticity in previous generations and being part of carrying that forward. They are suspicious, as they might have a right to be, about variations in that quality of transmission that have been, maybe you could say, distorted or questionable. And so it's almost like the thing that I have revered my whole life, which is finding great teachers and then just kind of like hanging out and sort of watching how they do the littlest things, which is what I did with Trungpa Rinpoche and all my teachers. I watch how they do the littlest things, and there's a line to chant, the hidden life examples of your body, speech, and mind. The hidden life examples of your body, speech, and mind. And that, to me, is really where the transmission, locks in. Of course, there's formal transmissions, and real empowerments. But this idea that by being around somebody who has wisdom and, perfection of wisdom and skillful means, and that you could watch how they make a pot of coffee.
Agreed. Can I tell you a story about Tulku Tunda Rinpoche?
Right. Who was that for you in some part, right?
In all parts.
Okay, wow.
It just took me a long time to realize it.
Wow.
But now I met him very shortly after I became a Buddhist. He gave me the Bodhisattva vow. So he lived in Cambridge. He died in December of 2023. But sometimes I would ask Sam, my meditation teacher, what about this? What about that? And he'd say, why don't you go talk to Tulku Tunda? So I would email him, and I'd go to his house, his apartment, and he would give me tea and we would talk. And he helped me so much, obviously, with so many things. And at one point, maybe 5 years before he died, Sam said, the next time you go see him, don't leave until he says goodbye.
Oh,
I know. I'm like,
good song
okay.
title.
I
Good
don't leave
song
until
for
he says
us.
goodbye.
Bluegrass
Right.
song. Don't leave. I'm not going to leave till you say goodbye. Wow.
Oh, I hear
Don't
him.
leave till he says goodbye. Wow.
I know. And I realized, well, I'm like, well, it's in an hour. I've taken up his time. It's in downtown, it's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My meter's probably running out. I don't want to take up too much time, whatever. So I would say, well, thank you. And so the first time I went to his apartment and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to leave. Like 3 hours went by. And 2 hours and 20 minutes was silent.
Oh.
Right?
Just sitting at a table or something, or what?
I was sitting on his couch. He was sitting in his chair. There was a little, what do you call it? Coffee table with almonds on it and a pot of tea. And we weren't looking at each other. I was trying not to fall asleep.
Yeah,
to be honest, because there was
Final frontier.
Exactly.
Right.
And and every time thereafter when I would go and be like, I'm not tired. Why do I keep wanting to fall asleep? I'm not tired. I'm going to drink some more coffee. I'm really not tired. So we would sit there and then he would stop talking and I would sit there. And then at some point, maybe 45 minutes later, he would say, so are you writing anything? Or I don't know what. He would say something. And then at some point he would say, well, thank you for coming. So I'm like, okay, now I'm leaving. But I feel like I didn't know what was going on. But now my sense is just being in the presence is the best teaching. And some kind of transmission. I'm not saying because I'm special or because I have now know the secret handshake, because I really don't. But just me and him. Just being able to be together, not talking about things, is, I think, akin to what you're saying, watching them do the littlest things.
Yeah. Well, and there's another piece to that story, which is the sleep inducing soporific dimension of the wakeful state of mind.
Say more. I'm very interested.
In other words, you experience this kind of brilliance, and we have it too. You can experience it in a moment of your own experience, like, oh my God, the world is glistening, and it's like there's no particular issue, and maybe you're experiencing vibration and a kind of inexplicable joy, or plethora of emotions could come and go. But basically, you're kind of like in a non-interfering state. You don't need to manipulate or interfere. And in that space, it's so vast that anybody who enters that space with somebody who's in that space will immediately fall asleep.
That's so interesting.
I'm talking about passing out now. Passing out in the sense that not necessarily going unconscious, but going into the 6 realms of like they'll be fabricating something to stay, because they can't sustain. They haven't developed the sustain power. So I want to just tell you one really quick story about Trungpa Rinpoche. He used to teach very late at night. You know that, right?
Yeah, I do.
And it would be like long after the thing. So one night in New York, he was teaching 2 different levels of Shambhala training. And so it was 2 a.m. by the time we got to the second one. And he's up there, kind of, and we're like, trying to stay with it. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, like ready to do that. And he was so spacious that the expanse between one word in the sentence and the next word in the sentence felt like an entire universe. And I passed out. I nodded out. I went like this, And then I came to, and he hadn't said the next word yet.
Oh my God.
So I had an entire nap, you could say, in the space between 2 of his words.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And if I hadn't had this experience with Tulku Tunda,
right,
I wouldn't be able to relate as much. But in that gap, this is my supposition, obviously could be totally wrong.
Right.
That's something is transmitted.
Yeah.
And I think I was receiving pointing out.
Yes.
But I fell asleep.
There can be things buried in your consciousness in moments like that too. Other levels of non-linear kind of communication that just get planted. I'm sure that our consciousness is multi-dimensional, right? Multi-layered. And not all of it relies on like 6 paragraphs and a chapter title,
I do. Yeah. We've been so lucky.
Yeah. So, inexplicable joy. What about my mistake, inexpressible joy? Can you express the joy?
Well, if express means emit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. If it
like
means explain.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. If it means explain, then probably not.
But what other ways could there be to express what you're talking about? Would music be one, or art?
For me, music really is.
Uh-huh.
But it's still inexplicable.
It's expressible, though.
It is expressible.
But inexplicable. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see Julian Lage tonight or tomorrow night. He's a great young jazz guitar player.
Oh, cool.
And the principles that we're talking about are pretty active when he's playing, because he has achieved freedom, as far as I can tell, from the bounds of repeating oneself.
It's a beautiful thing you just said.
Yeah, and that, I mean, jazz has that potential to start somewhere and then just, and I suggested to him that he make a record on successive nights at a club, just play the same songs. But the record is just one song that's been played on 7 nights in a row.
That's genius.
Well, I like to think so.
Well, I'm telling you, it is.
Does everybody listen to me? No, but the idea that you could take the same mantra, for example, the same Heart Sutra, and just express it 5 nights in a row on your retreat.
You know what gives rise to spontaneous expression? Repetition. So I didn't make that up. The great Claudio Naranjo, I love the Enneagram.
Right.
A great teacher of the Enneagram,
right.
Deceased in the last few years, said once, I heard it on a cassette, and I pulled over, wrote it down.
What's that?
Cassette. I know, exactly. Only repetition can give rise to spontaneous innovation.
Wow. Now, what about history repeating itself then?
Well, that I don't know.
Because a friend of mine, I'll leave her out of it for the moment, and I hope everybody can take this with a sense of humor and a grain of salt. She said, history repeats itself because people are stupid.
I can see that. I can make a case for that myself. But
is history repeating itself right now, do you think?
Yeah, probably.
Does it feel familiar?
Well, there's an arc.
Yeah.
My hope is that the swing in the opposite direction will come sooner rather than later.
How not to change topics, but how worried are you as a human being on the planet?
Yeah, I'm worried. I am, 1 to 10, 7.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, because of my nature, I like oscillate between 0 and 9.
Yeah, because you're 6 on the Enneagram. Anybody who's listening who knows the Enneagram. Yeah.
Yeah. We get caught up in the drama?
Second guessers.
Oh, shiza.
If this, then that, and then this will happen, and that will happen.
Oh, no, you're killing me softly with the Enneagram here.
I'm sorry. Sorry. But here's the good news about that number.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Don't trust anything. You don't trust anyone. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Test.
Okay.
And once a person, in this case, I would say myself, I've been fortunate, proves that they are trustworthy.
Yeah.
Lifelong friendship.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
It is deep. And it's the most beautiful kind of friendship. I'm with you. I feel that from you.
Thank you. That's such a heartwarming thing. And as I get older, the life arc seems to be like, kind of have that quality of beginning, middle, and end, becoming it just feels like the it's being summarized, like, in a book where somebody summarizes the flow of it. It feels a little bit like that these days. So, but the Enneagram, which is another special, look at you. And you and I have this very unique moments where, you remember I was sitting in your house in Boston once and I saw numbers circulating around your head. I didn't know what I was looking at. And you said it's the Enneagram, that you have this kind of, and you've had this magical relationship to numbers, which makes me want to take you to Atlantic City and see if we can make some money. Creativity, spirituality, and making a buck right there. But could you just briefly talk about your Enneagram book, and just for anybody who's getting to know you through this podcast and get to know the diversity of your offering?
Thank you. I would love to. Yeah, I wrote my book before, The Inexplicable Joy, is the Buddhist Enneagram. And the Enneagram, for anyone who doesn't know, Ennea is the Greek prefix for 9.
Oh.
And it describes 9 kinds of people.
Mm.
And then anyone who says, well, I'm not, that's not enough. I cannot be one of those 9. There's more than 9 kinds of people. I say, sorry, you're wrong. There are 9. And you could read it and see. So the reason that I wanted to write about it is not my book. You could read anything you want about the Enneagram.
Well, let's say the name of your book again for anybody who does want to read it.
Sure. Thank you. The Buddhist Enneagram.
Yeah, good. If you've been curious about the Enneagram, you should get that book too.
But what's the Buddhist connection for me is I have, like you, I've done practices to arouse compassion. I've tried to be compassionate. I've tried to be less grumpy. I've tried to be all these things. And so I assume those were valuable efforts. But the Enneagram has helped me to be compassionate more than anything else I have ever found, toward myself and toward others. It's a profound, skillful means.
Wow. So we don't have time to go into that. And I think we have talked about it in the past. I think you were on the podcast right after you put that book out.
Could be.
But so if anybody's interested in going deeper there, mainly it feels like those 2 topics, obviously you're doing workshops on those, and they're posted on your website, right? The openheartproject.com. And I think these days, this is something I feel like people are just drawn to a particular person to share some teachings with, and you should just go along with that initial feeling of connection. So I can really safely encourage people. I can send people to Susan Piver and know that they're going to be well taken care of, that they're going to be, brought some good education and have good camaraderie with the people around. I have complete confidence. So please, everybody, do take a pop in on Susan at the Open Heart Project. And we could just go on and on, as we often do. But I think for the interest of the time frame, I coined this phrase at the retreat. I said, people are always saying we're running out of time. You know that expression? So I've changed it to we're walking out of time.
I like it. It's much more relaxed.
Yeah, we've had a nice chat. We'll chat again soon. And thank you so much, Susan. If there's any last word, please, it's yours.
I love you. And I love talking with you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for being my friend.
Okay, everybody. See you soon, everybody.
All right, friends, that was episode 55 of the Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck podcast. Once again, that was Susan Piver from Open Heart Project. If you want to stay in touch with her offerings, then you can head over to openheartproject.com. I personally recommend picking up a copy of Inexplicable Joy, which can be found wherever you purchase your books. I want to also offer another heartfelt thank you to the folks over at Be Here Now Network for helping get this podcast out to the masses. Last but not least, you can support this show by giving us a like, subscribe, positive review, and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to head on over to dharmamoon.com to engage in our mindfulness programming and connect with like-minded folks in community. So once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening all the way through until the end. We'll catch you next time.